My parents gave my house to my brother because I don't have a family. Hey, so I'm a single guy in my early 30s, and it's a bit wild. My brother, who's 29, already has 4 kids. He started young at 22. His wife and I don't exactly see eye to eye. She's always trying to get under my skin and then plays the victim if I respond. My family adores her, even though they know she can be a real handful. Sure, she's attractive, but her attitude is a major turnoff. She's also unemployed despite having a degree, relying on my brother's income while my mom helps with the kids. They all live with my parents because they can't afford their place, so things are pretty cramped in that old 3-bedroom house from the 60s. Growing up, my brother was the favorite, even though we're just 3 years apart. He developed quite the ego since I wasn't allowed to fight back against his antics. He'd even mess with my first girlfriend until she left me, and my parents' advice was just to suck it up. When relatives called out the favoritism, my parents decided to move us far away to avoid the drama. When I turned 18, I moved out, which seemed to relieve my parents because they didn't have to support me anymore. They didn't even come to my high school graduation, but whatever. I've kept my distance ever since, only really seeing them during holidays. Then 2020 hit, and I lost my job, couldn't renew my condo lease, and had to sell almost everything. I bought a camper to put on my truck so I wouldn't be homeless. I thought I might be able to stay at my parents', but they basically wanted to charge me as much as an apartment for parking my camper there. They even called it an eyesore. So, I parked it in store lots, feeling pretty vulnerable and not sleeping much. I spent a few months on the road, running into a bunch of odd situations like people pretending to be from HOAs telling me to move. I ended up having to sneak around to keep the power on, like plugging into random outlets just to keep my fridge running. Eventually, I found a job in a nearby city, and my boss was really cool with me staying in my camper in the company lot. I worked all the time and even did some Sundays for free to cover a bit of rent. It wasn't ideal, but it worked out until I could get back on my feet. So, picture this, I was hanging around in the office. It was just me, the janitor, and the security guard, since I couldn't exactly shower in my camper. It didn't have a shower, just a portable toilet that I was not keen on using because emptying it? Yuck, no thanks. I'd usually crash at a friend's place or hit up my local gym for a quick shower. Luckily, I had a key to the warehouse and could use the bathroom there whenever. I became pretty tight with the night security guard, to the point where we're now close buddies. Living in the camper had its ups and downs. Keeping it warm in winter was a breeze with a small electric heater, but summer was a whole different story. No AC meant I had to buy a second-hand air conditioner to survive the heat. I was putting in a lot of overtime and picking up new skills from my coworkers, which eventually paid off. Mid this year, I snagged a supervisor position at work, which came with a better paycheck than my previous gig. That's when it hit me, I needed something more stable than a camper. After losing my condo, I wanted a solid, long-term solution. So, I started house hunting nearby and stumbled on a 3-bedroom manufactured home just 2 miles from work. I managed to get it for $10,000 less than asking price, wiping out most of my savings for the down payment but scoring a home loan. Finally, no more camper life. I parked the camper in the backyard, just for kicks, in case I needed it again. Feeling pretty proud, I posted about my new digs on social media. That's when things got wild. Out of nowhere, my parents, brother, and his family showed up to see my new place. I hadn't even given them my address, still a mystery how they found me. They probably pulled some stalker moves and tailed me from work or something. Wouldn't be surprised. As soon as I opened the door, they barged in like they owned the place, poking around with these weird smirks. My parents kept yammering about how much space I had and how unnecessary it was for a single guy like me. My brother, Dan, mentioned how my house was even closer to his job than their place. I should have seen the red flags. Eventually, Dan asked for a private chat, and as if on cue, everyone else cleared out, heading to the porch. That's when it clicked, they had a plan. Dan said I had too much space and suggested he and his family move in since his wife was expecting kid number 4. He argued that I had the camper to live in while they occupied the house. Oh, and rent? Not a word about that. Even though Dan had a good job, the idea was basically for me to cover the mortgage while living outside. I'd seen stories like this online, never thought I'd be living one. Still, I was ready. I hit record on my phone as Dan rambled on about why he deserved my house. He even tried to seal the deal with a handshake. That's when I finally found my voice and told him a firm, loud hell no. Dan was so thrown by my reaction, he stumbled back. I made it clear that this was my house, bought with my hard-earned money, and they had no right to it. Dan got uncomfortably close, insisting he deserved my place for his family. I laughed at that and held my ground, explaining I wasn't about to play landlord to him, especially not for free. Besides, it wasn't my problem that he kept expanding his brood and couldn't afford to move out from our parents' place. Dan was yelling about how I didn't need all that space and should hand it over. I pointed out that he'd never even offered to pay rent, expecting me to still cover everything without living in my own house. He argued family comes first, claiming our parents said I was supposed to do this. That's when I told him his family's needs weren't my responsibility, and my parents couldn't just decide what happened with my house. Things got heated. Dan's wife, Sil, stepped in, demanding I think of the family, while I pointed out I wasn't obligated to cater to them. She flipped out, actually hitting me before Dan pulled her away. I held up my phone, which had captured everything, and threatened to call the cops if they didn't leave. My parents told Dan it was time to go, but not before my mom said I had a week to come around. As they left, I told them not to come back, warning Sil about the recording and potential assault charges. She stormed out, furious and in tears, while my mom, being the last out, said I better do it for Dan and Sil. I firmly told her no. The moment they were gone, I jumped online and shared the whole drama with my extended family via social media. And man, did it spread like wildfire. Sorry, you won't find it now since it got deleted when I switched my profile to private. Anyway, I posted about it because I knew my family would be the first to twist the situation to make me look bad, and I was totally right. But I managed to get a head start by about an hour, and I had video evidence to support my side of the story. Being on top of it worked out because a good number of the family rallied with me right away. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law probably had plans to put their own spin on things, but it was too late. They didn't even bother trying to lie much. Sure, they had a few supporters, but everyone knew how entitled they are, so it was easy to see the real story. One person even called me, ranting about what a terrible brother I was and how I should step aside for a real family man. I just hung up and blocked them. That was the end of that, at least for a week. Then my parents showed up with Dan at my door, ringing the bell like maniacs. Thanks to some latch chains, I cracked the door open just enough to keep them out. My dad and brother demanded to come in, but I told them I was recording everything and would call the police if they tried anything. My mom tried the sweet talk approach, asking if I was ready to let Dan move in. I laughed and told them no way, and to get lost. They left, but not without my mom's dramatic tears and some dirty looks. I thought it was all over, but nope, they had more insane plans. Later that week, I came home to find Dan and his family trying to move in with a moving truck in my driveway. Dan just smirked at me, and I told them to stop. His wife, Sil, tried to fake being nice about it, saying my mommy approved, which made me furious. So, I locked myself in my truck and called the cops. Sil freaked out and threatened to scratch my truck, but the 911 operator heard it all. I warned her that I'd sue if she did anything, and she backed off. When the cops showed up, Dan and Sil had locked themselves inside my house. I explained everything and showed my ID with my address. They'd even drilled out my lock and changed it. My parents showed up and tried to claim I'd agreed to rent them the house, but Dan and Sil produced fake lease papers, without my signature. I laughed and called out their fraud. I said I'd get a lawyer if anything was damaged or stolen and might even call CPS. Dan went pale when I said they'd lose his job over this. My mom finally caved and got everyone to back down. Sil tore up the fake papers in a fit, like it was confetti, and an officer had to tell her to clean it up. Dan and his family started packing up. They tried one last guilt trip with all the kids crying, but it didn't work. Dan yelled at me, calling me selfish, but I just laughed and told him it wasn't about sharing, he was trying to take over. The cops stuck around until everyone finally left. So, they were all like, "We're not leaving until this gets sorted," and before you know it, 2 cops turned into 4. For some reason, that seemed to light a fire under my parents to get things moving. I made Dan give me the keys to the new lock he'd put on my front door. He really didn't want to, and instead of just handing them over, he actually tossed them down the street into a storm drain. Can you believe it? But one of the cops wasn't having it and made him fish them out. Dan had to pull up the grate and got pretty filthy doing it. When he gave me the keys, he slapped them into my hand, grumbling all the while. I told them to get lost and never come back. My mom was all dramatic, saying I'd be disowned, like I was supposed to care. I sarcastically joked, "Oh no, does this mean I won't have to endure any more of those lovely family holidays where you treat me like crap just because Dan's your golden child?" I reminded them they were so awful to me growing up that if Dan ever needed an organ, he wouldn't get a thing from me. I told them to suck it up, just like they always told me when they mistreated me. My parents looked totally shocked after that, and the cops gave them some pretty judgy looks too. Honestly, if you want to hold crappy parents accountable, confronting them in front of cops is the way to go because they probably won't try anything stupid then. My mom started crying and walked away, while my dad just stood there looking like he wanted to punch something, and Dan stood there holding his kids, looking defeated. Meanwhile, Still was on my lawn throwing a tantrum. Soon enough, they lined up to haul their stuff out of my house. Nothing was unpacked, so it went quickly, but the whole time, my mom kept trying to guilt me into changing my mind, saying it wasn't too late and Dan could pay rent or that I could move back with him so Dan could rent my house. I told her to quit it and keep packing because I didn't want Dan around, his money, or to live with them after everything they put me through growing up. Making a deal with them would be like dealing with the devil. Still threw another fit, flinging a box down and sulking because she didn't want to live with my parents either. She sat there pouting until everyone else was done, refusing to get up when it was time to go. Finally, they got everything out and into the truck. Before they left, I let my parents have it one last time about all the crap they put me through. With the cops right there, they couldn't say much back. I called them out on everything, especially how they wouldn't even let me stay over with my camper while I was trying to get back on my feet. They let Dan and still mocked me for being broke but expected me to hand my house over to Dan for free when I needed a place. Meanwhile, they tried to charge me for parking my camper when they knew I was jobless. When I threw all that at them, the cops looked even more judgmental. I put my parents in the hot seat again, asking what I'd done to deserve such treatment other than being born. Now that I was finally making something of myself, they wanted to take it away for their beloved Dan. I pointed out that I bought my house with my own money and owed them nothing. I told them I'd never ask them for anything because to them, I'd always just be a doormat or a cash cow. They didn't have any answers, just stood there like deer in headlights. I kept ranting, asking why they thought they were such good parents. My dad turned beet red, more embarrassed than angry, while my mom cried into his jacket. I bluntly agreed she was horrible, as were they all, and they'd probably go to hell for it. They knew they were awful, but if I'd said this stuff in private, they'd just blame me instead of owning up to it. They lived in denial so long it was practically their identity. My mom cried even more, and my dad looked more defeated than ever. Dan and his family didn't even look at me while they loaded up the truck. I made sure nothing of mine went missing, not that I had much furniture anyway. They all got in their cars, and still glared at me until Dan finally got her to drive off. Once they were gone, I went online and shared what happened. My parents were too ashamed to try defending themselves, and while our family was kind of split before, now almost everyone took my side. The ones who didn't just stayed neutral because no one bought into the whole "we did it for Dan" excuse anymore. Their family support dwindled, and a lot of folks I thought wouldn't back me actually did, even the ones who used to meddle on their behalf. So, I guess they'd had enough too. Around that time, I offered to host half of the family for Christmas at my new place, my parents not on the guest list. Interestingly, I wasn't blocked from Dan and Steele's profiles, and I saw they had their fourth baby in early November, still shacked up with my parents. Steele made these passive-aggressive posts every couple of weeks about not having enough space, clearly aimed at me. It must be driving my parents nuts having 3 rowdy kids, an unstable Steele, my golden child brother, and a newborn all under one roof. Maybe they should move into a camper in their backyard and let Dan have the house. That'd be doing something for him, right? For those saying I should have had my brother and Steele arrested, the only reason I didn't is that they're parents. Their kids need them, and if Dan went to jail, he'd lose his job and the family would have no money. Steele just had a baby, so jail isn't where they need to be. I got my revenge without pressing charges, but would I be this merciful again? Probably not, and they know it. I waited until after New Year's to post more about it, just in case something else happened, and it did. Steele kept making those passive-aggressive posts, especially after the new baby, constantly whining about living with my parents and needing more space. But she just kept repeating the same old complaints, dressing them up in slightly different words each time. Okay, so I know I might sound a bit dismissive, but trust me, if you went through what I did with these folks, you'd be playing tiny violins sarcastically too. They're just that frustrating. I mean, I even held off until January to set things straight, and just as I expected, more drama went down. I had this big idea to invite half the family over for a Christmas Eve party at my place. It was quite a trek for them, like 3 to 4 hours drive, but they all came anyway, just to show their support. They were really sweet, going on about how hard I worked to get my own house and how sorry they were for all the nonsense I'd been through. They asked why I didn't just pack up my camper and head back to them instead of basically living without a proper home for so long. I had to admit sheepishly that I just love this area and it has the best job opportunities for me. My hometown doesn't really offer much in my field, so I wanted to make my own way. Luckily, they got it, and we all moved on to having a really nice party, the best one I'd been to in ages. Some family members even brought along some awesome Christmas CDs, and my favorite was definitely the Ray Charles album my uncle brought. His Christmas songs are unbeatable. It was such a great time. For once, I felt like I could just forget all my past issues and kick back. But, oh boy, I wouldn't be writing this if things stayed peachy. About 2 hours into the party, guess who decided to crash it? Yup, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law just waltzed right in like they owned the place. They didn't even knock. I stopped the music and told them to leave right then and there. They tried to charm their way into staying, saying they brought gifts, but my uncle wasn't having any of it. He stood up and told them they didn't deserve to be here after everything they pulled months earlier. Several other relatives backed him up. Oh, did I mention that this uncle is my mom's brother? He used to adore her until he learned about the mess between me and my parents. Even my grandparents, as old as they are, stepped in and told my parents that if they wanted to make things right with me, it was way too soon. They were super disappointed in them for the favoritism they showed my brother, which they thought they had hidden well, but everyone knew. They told them they needed to really try treating me like a son if they wanted a place in my life again. Then they turned to my brother and sister-in-law and said they were tired of the drama she kept posting online and to just let it go already. My house wasn't going to be their new home. My sister-in-law went back to her usual routine of throwing a pity party, saying she should be living here and not me because she has 4 kids who need more space. She threw a tantrum about how it wasn't fair I got this house when I don't even have a family of my own. She just wanted a better place to live and to feel like a real mom. Yeah, it was petty, but I called her out, saying she's hardly a good mom when she lets my mom do most of the parenting while she sits around drinking and playing on her phone or spending all of Dan's money. I even joked that I was surprised her baby didn't get drunk from her breast milk with all the booze she drinks, which, okay, might have been a bit much. She demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom, and I just said the evidence speaks for itself. If she wants to move out of my parents' place someday, she should probably use her college degree, get a job, and save some money. My mom already does most of the babysitting for my brother's kids, so she'd have time once the baby's a bit older. Then my brother's oldest, who's 7, ran up screaming and kicking because I was yelling at his mom. He kept yelling about how she said I was the bad guy who made her cry and wouldn't let them live here. My brother tried to pull him away, but then the whole family jumped back in, turning it into a sort of intervention against my brother and sister-in-law. Everyone was crying, the sister-in-law, her new baby, her kids, even Dan was nearly in tears from the verbal thrashing. He sat there looking utterly defeated, unable to meet anyone's eyes, because he knew he couldn't pull his golden child act with everyone there ready to call him out. Eventually, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law left in defeat, and we got back to partying. We agreed to not mention the drama for the rest of the night. Since most of us had been drinking, everybody stayed over at my place, even using my camper as extra sleeping space. Everyone was pretty amazed that I'd lived in that thing for 2 years. I got questions about how I managed during summers and winters and all that. On Christmas morning, I was up early, brewing coffee and handing out ibuprofen for those dealing with hangovers from the spiked eggnog. They all said I was a much nicer host than my parents ever were, and we all agreed to do it again for next Christmas. As for my sister-in-law, she did finally stop making those passive-aggressive posts about me and even deleted the old ones. But, not long after the new year, she complained online again, this time about how she tried to convince my parents to get a camper like mine so she and Dan could live in the main house. Unsurprisingly, my parents shot that idea down quickly. The post disappeared after a couple of days, and she hasn't posted much since. It's like she realized there's no point if no one's paying attention anymore. With Dan unable to move them out on his salary alone, I wouldn't be surprised if they have more kids and end up stuck in the same cycle. Things have calmed down for me since then. I've even had some friends over for poker nights. I'm terrible at poker because I can never remember the rules, but who cares? We just drink beer, eat junk food, and have a good laugh. We all pigged out on Whoppers from Burger King and just had a blast. I'm thinking maybe around summer I might try dating. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, right? Fingers crossed it goes well. As for my camper, it just sits in my yard now, kind of like a backup home. There are days I still go hang out in there because I did live in it for 2 years, so it feels like home. Who knows, maybe one day I'll actually use it for camping like it was intended. I've never been camping before because my parents thought it was a waste of time, so it'd be a brand new experience for me.